Attack of the Clones. And yes, I'm reviewing this. And before I progress, this video is not intended for Padawans under the age of 13 without permission from your Jedi Master. And I shall continue with this Star Wars marathon. And oh man, I'm gonna have to drink a lot to get through this. Just kidding, I don't drink. I'm not 18 or 21 or however old you have to be to drink. I'm stupid. Anyway, it's time to discuss the, well, it's certainly not the most pointless Star Wars movie ever. Oh boy. Here we go. So, what the hell is this? Okay, no, I'll stop. Oh, okay, so Attack of the Clones was the second movie in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, written and directed by George Lucas. It was made in 2002, and it's set 10 years after The Phantom Menace. Now, in this movie, Padme is no longer a queen, she's a senator on the Republic Senate. Somebody's trying to assassinate her, and they don't know why. Now, Anakin is Obi-Wan's apprentice, and they're both, you know, older. Anakin's about 19. They are trying to figure out who is trying to assassinate Padme, so this robot thing releases these worms into her room at night to try to assassinate her while Anakin and Obi-Wan are arguing, because they argue a lot because Anakin's a teenager and Obi-Wan never really wanted to train him in the first place, so they argue a lot. They're arguing about petty things, and then they realize what's going on and they have to save Padme, and then basically Obi-Wan jumps out a window, so he gets on the speeder, Anakin finds the speeder, and they have this whole chase through Coruscant, which is the capital city of the Republic. They go through this whole chase, and then they find this bounty hunter, and she's a shapeshifter, and they corner her, and they ask her the name of the, you know, who sent you here, and she's about to say it, and then she gets killed by a poison dart. Obi-Wan goes into this pub, and, you know, asks about drinks. Anakin's whatever. Anakin reunites with Padme and, Jar Jar, who's kind of just there. He's on the Senate as well. Padme, you know, and Anakin, he's like, I not a day's gone by where I haven't thought about you. He's very clearly obsessed with her, so that's awkward. Obi-Wan is trying to figure out information about this bounty hunter, Jango Fett, the name that he has, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. So he goes to he got this like chip off of the girl who died. So he goes into this diner and talks to his friend, and then he's figuring out this information, and they're talking about this system or this planet that must be somewhere. Go check the archives in the library. So he goes to the library to check the archives. This planet does not exist. It's not in the archives, but he's like, I know there's a planet there. The coordinates line up. So he goes to where Yoda's training a bunch of kids. He just kind of walks in on the session, asks Yoda, and then they say someone must have removed it from the archives, but only a Jedi could do that. So then Obi-Wan sends Anakin and Padme off. He says that Anakin is supposed to protect Padme because, again, somebody's trying to kill her. So they send her off to Naboo. She goes back to Naboo with Anakin. And then Obi-Wan goes to the coordinates of where this planet is. It's called Camino. It's this very rainy, remote planet. He goes there, he goes inside. They have this very clean, crisp facility. The people who live there are talking about a clone army that the Republic apparently had asked for 10 years ago. Obi-Wan knows nothing of this. He's very confused. He asks them what's going on. It turned out they have a whole army of clones that they've been building, supposedly for the Republic. Obi-Wan knows nothing of this, and he wants to report it back to the Republic. He meets Jango Fett, the original Jango Fett, who is a bounty hunter, and they've cloned him numerous times. Jango Fett is just kind of chilling. Boba Fett's his son / unaltered clone, who's a kid, and he's just kind of there. So Jango and Obi-Wan get into a fight outside on the ship. It's raining, and Obi-Wan's trying to send this transmission, and then Jango attacks him. They get into a fight, and then meanwhile, Anakin and Padme are on Naboo. They're falling in love, and Anakin's not supposed to be in love with her because attachments are forbidden by the Jedi Code, but he's in love with her anyway. And anyway, he's also having these nightmarish visions about his mother. He thinks his mother's going to die, so he's worried about that because he left his mother on Tatooine. She was still a slave when he left in the last movie. So, Obi-Wan and Jango, they go off on this chase through this asteroid field, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Obi-Wan tries to transmit to Anakin, and then Anakin decides he has to go to Tatooine to save his mother. He takes Padme with him, and R2-D2. He takes them with him. They land on Tatooine. Obi-Wan's trying to send a transmission, but it's not going through because Anakin's not on Naboo. So they're on Tatooine. Anakin hooks up with his step family, this moisture farmer named Lars, who apparently bought his mother and freed her and then married her. So he goes to see Lars's son and daughter-in-law. He goes to see them at their house. Lars is in a wheelchair. He got his leg hurt, and he said that he thinks Anakin's mother is dead. She was taken to the camp by the Sand People. So Anakin freaks out. He goes riding off into the night to go find his mom. And then, meanwhile, Obi-Wan's landed on this planet Geonosis. So there's this separatist from a republic, Count Dooku, who used to be a Jedi. He's the separatist leader. He has this whole army, you know, the droids and all that. He has the whole separatist army, and he's going against the republic. So, also worth noting that Jango Fett told Obi-Wan that the clones were ordered by a man named Tyrannus, so nobody knows who that is. Obi-Wan's reported all this back to the Jedi Council, and now he's on Geonosis, and he gets captured by Count Dooku. So going back to the other plotline here, Anakin shows up at the Tusken camp. He finds his mom, but his mom's dying. He can't save her, and then he goes on a murder spree and kills a bunch of Sand People. He gets really mad, and then he goes back home, or back to the house, and tells Padme about it. And then he's really upset, and he thinks, but oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's not the Jedi way. But then he's like, I don't care. I was really mad because they killed my mom, and he's really, really upset. He starts, you know, kind of turning evil at this point. But he's not fully evil. So him and Padme decide to go rescue Obi-Wan at this point because they realize he's captured or they don't get the transmission. Padme's like, yeah, we should go rescue Obi-Wan. Anakin's like, I don't care about him because he's like, doesn't like his master, but he's like, okay, fine. So then Anakin and Padme, they go to Geonosis to rescue Obi-Wan, who again has been captured by Dooku. They go into this like facility where they're making droids. This is like a machinery. This is like a factory. They're building these separatist droids. C-3PO's there with Anakin. At this point, he's more completed, and he ends up getting mixed up with the droids. His head goes on the body of one of the droids and all that. So that ends up happening. They have this whole chase sequence. Padme almost gets melting in hot lava. You know, they do this whole thing. Then they get captured, and they're about to be sent into an arena. They confess their love for each other because they think they're about to die. They go sent into the Coliseum with all these monsters. Obi-Wan's there too, and then they start fighting. Dooku and all these guys are overseeing what's going on, and then so, you know, they have the droids and all that. Then Mace Windu, who's this Jedi, he shows up with a bunch of Jedi to rescue them. So they're all there. Jango Fett's there. They have this whole fight. Mace Windu cuts off Jango's head. They have this whole fight, and then they get surrounded by the Separatists. by the droids and all that. The Jedi all get surrounded, but then just in time, Yoda shows up with the clone army that was made for the Republic, supposedly, even though he knew nothing about this. He's like, hey, we need this clone army. So Yoda shows up with the clones, and they all start fighting. Then they escape, and they're trying to get back to the hangar. Padme is still kind of freaked out. She falls out of the thing. Anakin freaks out and he wants to save her, but Obi-Wan's like, you can't do that. For some reason, they go chase down Dooku. They end up, the two of them just kind of run in there, take on Dooku, just kind of whatever. It doesn't go well. Anakin gets his arm cut off. And then Yoda shows up and just completely bests Dooku with the Force and his lightsaber. But then he gets away, and then at the end, Yoda says that the Clone War has begun, even though the clones are on his side, supposedly. The clones versus the Separatists, the Republic versus the Separatists. But then at the end, you see, first of all, you see Dooku meet with Sidious. We know Sidious from the first film. Dooku meets with Sidious, and we realize that Dooku's his apprentice, and Dooku says, Dooku is greeted as Tyrannus. So now we know that Dooku is Tyrannus. So now we know that the Separatists were the ones who ordered the clone army, which is very interesting, since now they're being used for the Republic. That is a very interesting plot thread that will get resolved in the next film. And Anakin and Padme get married on Naboo with just the droids as witnesses, and then the movie ends. So, rather long plot synopsis. There's a lot to cover. Anyway, right after that, that is the basic plot of the movie. I left out some of the, trivial stuff, but for the most part, that is what happens. So, this is kind of Anakin's first steps towards the dark side. And right here, I will be getting into this movie soon. But first of all, I have to talk about, the effects, the music, and the tone, because these are the things that I think just really, how does it look, how does it feel, how does it sound? Obviously, sound design's on point. The soundtrack's really good. They did reuse a good bit of music from the first movie, which I thought was kind of interesting. I did really like the love theme for Anakin and Padme. Some of the scenes it's associated with are, I'll get to that, but I thought the theme itself was quite pleasant. Again, aesthetically, this film looked really good. Again, it was really colorful, didn't really have the dark tone I was kind of would have expected from this movie. It's definitely turning darker, but it kind of had, was very bright, colorful, very vibrant, lots of planets. I love the diversity just of all the planets. You get Tatooine, you get Geonosis, you get, Coruscant, which is probably one of my favorite worlds in Star Wars. I just love the idea of this, floating... It's not entirely a floating city, but this, whole planet that's just a city. You did have, Cloud City, you had the mining colony in Empire Strikes Back, but this is the first time we've really seen, a full-blown civilization. And I'll get to that a little bit more in a minute. Again, music's great as always. I think the CGI is considerably better in this one. Again, some of the backgrounds and sets really aesthetically pleasing. The part on Tatooine where Anakin goes off in his speeder to go rescue his mom. You've got Duel of the Fates playing, and you've got the, red sky. It's really, really good at setting the tone. Aesthetically, extremely pleasing. But now we have to get into one of my major issues, which is, that this feels like two movies. There are two story threads that do come together at the end when you have Anakin and Padme and then Obi-Wan and, whatever. These two story threads feel very disconnected from each other for the majority of the movie. You have the story thread with Anakin and Padme falling in love, and then Anakin trying to save his mother and turning evil, and then you have this story thread with Obi-Wan and the Republic and the clones and all that, which in my opinion is by far the more interesting story, and we'll get to that in a minute. I thought that was the one that was really interested. The whole thing with Palpatine, Palpatine kind of possibly pulling the strings here. You got some interesting stuff going on with Dooku. This character played by Christopher Lee, really good actor, really good character. So pretty interesting thing there, but I honestly kind of felt like it was two separate movies. You've got this kind of silly love story with this dark undertone of having visions about his mother, and then you have this whole almost political space thriller a little bit. You've got some of the chases through that, and honestly, I thought that part of the movie was pretty well done with Obi-Wan, considering they all they had to go off was one line in the original Star Wars about the Clone Wars. I thought they did a pretty good job, actually figuring out what the heck that was supposed to be. I mean, parts of it were a little bit contrived, but honestly, Palpatine, you have, you know, Palpatine in the Senate here, and, of course, Sidious, who are the same person. That will be confirmed in the next film, but he's, very good, very good. I just felt like the film really felt uneven. There were, like, two parts of it. There was, like, the political, kind of more political thriller slash the love story. So it just felt, and I did think the end sequence, the third act was pretty good. A little bit dried out with some of the fighting, but overall it was pretty good. Going into the characters themselves here, I kind of feel mixed on it. I don't really like what they did with Anakin. I mean, it's better. Character-wise, it's better than in the first film, because at least there's an inclination of him turning to the dark side, which in the first film you just don't see that at all. He's just this innocent little kid. Anakin in this movie is, you know, kind of sulky, which isn't totally weird, because, like, Luke was a whiny little brat in the first Star Wars. But, like, Anakin, he's kind of playing this, like, lover, bad boy slash romantic James Dean type, and it doesn't really work very well. I think they really needed to make him, again, a little more evil. He's like playing this like romantic type, and that doesn't really quite fit. I don't see this guy as Darth Vader. I see this as a weird teenager. I just don't really see it that way. So I don't see this guy as Darth Vader personally. He just doesn't give me the vibes of Darth Vader. What they did with Obi-Wan and Anakin's bastard apprentice relationship is pretty good. I think having Obi-Wan, again, having Obi-Wan here being, you know, the mentor, but not, the mentor is being kind of put into this position, and he makes a lot of mistakes as a mentor. He doesn't necessarily understand Anakin's strengths. He has trouble with that, and obviously that's going to end up being his downfall. He thinks he has too much confidence in the Jedi Council, and that's going to end up being his downfall. Because the Jedi Council is kind of stupid. I did like what they did with Obi-Wan. Yoda in this, he just kind of shows up. There's a bunch of clones. They really toned back Jar Jar Binks. They're like, we don't want to deal with him, but they really toned him back. Now, Padme was pretty good in this movie. Toward the end, I really liked her in the third act. She's fighting in the arena, and she's pretty spunky in this movie. Again, I'll get to that when I review Revenge of the Sith. Oh my god! But she's pretty spunky in this movie. So overall, I thought the characters were pretty good. Overall, what they did with Anakin and some of the relationship with Anakin and Padme could have been done better. But overall, the actual story was okay. The characters were decently well developed. But so far, I've been talking pretty positively about this movie, and there are legitimately a lot of things I like about it. That's the thing when I'm talking about it. But one of the things that kind of does bother me too, talking about the characters in Anakin, is you have, why does Anakin turn to the dark side? You'd think fear. That's a pretty reasonable, I guess, reason. But you have recklessness and fear. Like, he doesn't have a lot of discernible character faults other than being kind of reckless. And Obi-Wan's reckless too. Obi-Wan is a good character. He's morally, superior to Anakin, but he's just, recklessness isn't really a trait to me. For instance, Harry Potter is a very reckless character, and he always has his heart in the right place. So to me, that's not really a trait that turns you to the dark side. They say fear and anger, and I don't think fear is necessarily a bad trait either. Fear is a human trait. If you let fear consume you, then yes. Then you have, just disobeying your master, which is just, a thing. That's just, oh yeah, disobeying your master. That's totally something that makes you turn evil. And testosterone, because his hormones are through the roof in this film. And that equals the dark side, apparently. But yeah, otherwise, I thought that was a little bit weird, a little bit contrived. I'll get into it more in the next review. But going into this here, again, didn't really think there was a ton of development. It just felt kind of contrived. But going into my major issues with this film, both the performances and the script, well, starting with the performances and the acting, was pretty good overall. You really had great performances, obviously, from Ian McDiarmid, Ewan McGregor, Samuel L. Jackson, you had really great performances there. But then you had our two main leads outside of Obi-Wan. To me, I think the prequels are more Obi-Wan's trilogy than Anakin's, which is not what the focus was going for, but I personally think that's how it ended up working out. And I like that. Ewan McGregor does a great job for Obi-Wan. I really like seeing Obi-Wan develop as a character. As much as I would have had him be older and, I would have written it differently, what they ended up doing with it was pretty good. And I love how they develop Obi-Wan. He's not a perfect character, and I really do like that. So, our two other leads here, we have Anakin, we have Padme. I don't know what was going on, and a lot of this I can blame on the script, and I'll get to that. But they just have no romantic chemistry at all. There's a lot of really kind of forced facial expressions. He is way overacting, Hayden Christensen. He's way overacting, with his facial expressions, of his he's being so dramatic, and she's not acting enough. She's just kind of okay, this is happening. The delivery, one of the things I just don't like, I don't know if this is just what Natalie Portman sounds like, or if this is just the direction. She sounds like a little girl. I don't like her, in the romantic scenes, I don't like the way she delivers the lines. I don't like her voice. Her voice is very girly. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it just doesn't fit the character to me. Hayden's lines are delivered, I guess they're okay. They're kind of wooden, and they're a lot of times it kind of feels like they didn't do a second take. They're just okay, that's good. The line's good. Let's just film it. But the actual writing itself, oh boy. So a lot of the lines themselves are very bad. And again, I feel like this would have been fine if the performances were better. For instance, you kind of had these younger and experienced actors here. You had in the original trilogy, you had people like Alec Guinness, who were knew what they were doing and improvised. Harrison Ford improvised a lot of his lines, changed a lot of his lines so it would flow more naturally. He was just kind of good with making it flow. I'm not saying the lines were never, Star Wars has never been known for having riveting dialogue or anything. Obviously, even the original movie, it's oh, that's no moon, that's a space station. It's too big to be a space station. And George Lucas has admitted he's not good at writing dialogue, which I think definitely shows. I do really wish, at least this script I think was proofread. I don't think the Phantom Menace one was, but the script is just horrible in terms of the actual lines. The lines are considerably worse. At least they don't have the mistakes of Bail Antilles that you had in the first one. But I would say Phantom Menace was just boring, but the lines in this are really bad a lot of the time. And again, could have been salvaged if they'd had better actors or more experienced actors, I think. If they'd had somebody like Harrison Ford, they could have salvaged that. And in my opinion, Ewan McGregor is an example of being able to, salvage it. I just think George Lucas isn't very good at writing dialogue and really should have had someone else write it or proofread it, because he ended up just writing the whole script. I think he should have had someone who knew how to write dialogue, better, kind of look over it, like me, because I write dialogue, but I'm terrible at description, so there's that. I think you should have had somebody look over it for real. So the lines themselves are not good, and there's a few scenes where the performances and the lines are extremely cringeworthy. These romantic scenes between Anakin and Padme, I get what they're going for. They're going for this forbidden romance, and he's kind of lusting after her, and he isn't supposed to have these feelings, and then she kind of comes around to him, and the whole, I get what they're going for plot-wise, but, oh man, is it not well executed. A lot of the lines people like to poke fun at, there's the part about the sand, I don't like sand, again, the delivery is just really not good, it's just kind of funny. Again, in the context of the movie, it's just a kind of a weird line that didn't need to be there. But to me, there were two scenes that stuck out to me as being really bad. Again, this is just a pet peeve of mine. I don't really like giggly little girls, or I don't even like little girls, but teenage girls who are I don't like that. And Padme is the epitome of that in the romantic scenes. I don't like that. So there's one scene where they're sitting at the table having dinner, and he's playing with this pair with the Force, and it's really stupid. And then right after that, they're sitting by the fireplace, and they have this whole talk about their forbidden romance and all this, oh, the kiss that you never should have given me. And again, the writing is just atrocious. The two of them just have no chemistry. And then probably the worst scene, I would say, in all of Star Wars, for just how darn stupid it is. The scene starts out okay. They're sitting in this field. They're kind of talking about, like, politics, or she's a senator. She's making him jealous. She's talking about this guy she used to date, or she used to have a crush on when she's, like, 12. You know, they're just kind of having this, like, little conversation. But then, she, is like, oh, that sounds like a dictatorship to me, you know, in a very, like, light tone. And then he's like, oh, you're a politician. I don't like politicians. And they have this, like, whole conversation about politicians, but then she chases after him. He, like, goes running in this field, like this, like, very, like, CGI rendered field. I don't think this was an actual field. Like, it's just too bright. It's too, like, the saturation is just, oh my god, like, it's just sorry, like, I don't even like the way this scene looks. He goes into this field and he rides this, like, potato. It's not actually potato, it's this weird creature that he's riding, and then he gets bucked off, and she's like, oh, you hurt. And she goes up to him, and then they roll around in the field, and they're laughing, and it's just the worst thing ever. You know, there are some bad scenes, I'll get to that too, like, Last Jedi, had some bad scenes. You have this, you know, the Mary Poppins scene, and that, but, like, this was, to me, the worst scene in Star Wars. The scene was just awful and atrocious. So, you had some really low points. I think, out of all the Star Wars movies, this has the most low points. I found Phantom Menace to be the overall flattest film. It was boring. It had, like, 2 high points. The entire film was just flat. But I will say that this film had a lot of stuff I genuinely liked. Getting into the you know, positive standout scenes. Again, the opening is fantastic. It takes a bit to get going, but once it gets going, you have the chase sequence in Coruscant. I love that. It's amazing. The opening is absolutely fantastic. They're just riding around on their speeders. Again, the CG is really cool. You get these, like, TV screens. You get all these little details in the environment. You have, like, they go into a bar at one point, and they're, on TV, they have this sport being played by robots, and you have all these little details, and they go through all these different parts of the city. You've got this industrial area, you've got this, like, kind of gambling, like, Vegas area of the city. Again, the whole thing is just really cool looking. It feels alive. It feels like a city, more so than any of the places, any of the locations, environments in the original trilogy. And I think what they did in the original trilogy was really smart, because they didn't have the ability to make, like, large sets or CGI. I mean, they had sets. So they kind of filmed in a lot of remote locations, but they're like, hey, the galaxy's been at war, everything's desolate. So I think that really fit. But this is, like, the, like, thriving republic before the war. And I really like that. I just love, everything's like, oh, just so, it feels alive. It feels like a city. They go in this, like, filthy back alley at one point, like, oh, everything's so shiny and clean. Like, inside, like, where Palpatine is, like, inside the Senate, the Jedi Council, everything is, like, so shiny and clean. But then you go out into the streets, it's a little bit, you know, you've got, of course, you don't have that here, but of course you've got Solo, you've got the mean streets of Corellian, you've got all this stuff. So you kind of have that little juxtaposition. Everything is so shiny and clean, and the, like, Jedi Council and, like, the Senate and all that. So again, visually it's stunning, but I think that opening scene is really fantastic. Again, the third act is pretty good. I did not mind the Yoda fight. Everybody was like, oh my god, Yoda fights Dooku with a lightsaber. That didn't really bother me at all. I thought that lightsaber fight was fine. It wasn't as good as the one in Phantom Menace, but again, that's one of the only things Phantom Menace does better, other than having a relatively uneventful script. So it was alright. It was serviceable, I suppose. Lightsaber fight was kind of fun. I liked the part where you had all these Jedi in the ring, and they're just all using their lightsabers to fight these droids. I thought that was fun. And the arena stuff was kind of fun in general. I did like the action scene where they were, in the, like, factory, and probably one of my favorite parts was when Obi-Wan and Jango are fighting in the rain. You've got some interesting, like, kind of hand-to-hand combat there, which you don't really see a lot in Star Wars. I thought that was really cool to see. Obi-Wan and Jango fighting, and then the subsequent chase through space. So, and again, really aesthetic when Anakin goes to, like, save his mom. You just have this, like, red sky, and like, there's some really, in, like, Geonosis too, you've got this, like, giant red planet, and it's just, aesthetically, I just think there's a lot of really good scenes, a lot more so than Phantom Menace. Overall, I was entertained. And, I think that's what I have to be clear about, is that the problem I have is with Phantom Menace is that I wasn't entertained, with the exception of, like, the third act. With this movie, I was most of the time I was entertained. Not saying there weren't boring scenes in there, but I was either, you know, the scenes were genuinely good and I was entertained because of that, or they were so awful that I was entertained for all the wrong reasons. So I would think some of the lows in this movie would probably sink it below Phantom Menace, but I must say, personally, I would rather be annoyed than bored. I'd rather be laughing at stupid things that shouldn't be happening. So overall, I get far more entertainment out of this than Phantom Menace. Is it better? Well, I mean, this movie is a movie of peaks and troughs. It's an inconsistent mess. You have this one storyline, which is pretty good, and then you have this other storyline, which is trash. And it's not even the storyline itself that's trash, with Visions and his mother and all. It's just, it's so badly executed with the romance. And, I mean, this film really has these, like, peaks and troughs. Peaks and troughs. Phantom Menace was kind of a flat line until the end. but, like, this entire movie is just, like, peak and trough, peak and trough, peak. And that's just the entire vibe I get from Attack of the Clones. So, yes, I like this movie. I also hate it. But next up we have Revenge of the Sith. So I will see you all for that review. Hopefully you enjoy it. I'll see you all next time. Bye!